Hi, Bob. John Liston from Seattle Fair Growth. And thank you for coming here today. Can you keep your answers short, because I got a couple of questions. I wanted to follow up on some of the things you said today. So for many of us, Seattle we came here, it was actually maybe 20 years ago, the most livable city in the United States. And today, I mean, that has really gotten a lot worse over time, as you know. The traffic in Seattle is nearly the worst in the country. Housing, as you mentioned, is unaffordable. I live in Ballard, and we've been kind of Ballardized with the kind of housing that has been developed there. And Ballardized. And yes, and we're not proud of it. And, you know, thousands of people do not have homes tonight. So as mayor, what do you believe in when you think about livability? What is your definition of livability, and what would you do to improve it?
My vision of livability is much different than somebody who grew up downtown, but the neighborhood I grew up in was a red-lined area back in the day after World War II. So it was the only place in the city where people of color could actually buy a home. That's why you see so many people of color focused in the South End area. That is changing because those families, like my parents, when they bought in there, are being priced out of the neighborhood. My vision of Seattle is my neighborhood down there, which is one of the most diverse in the United States, actually. My legislative district is one of the most diverse in the United States. There's over 150 languages spoken in my legislative district. That diversity is our strength, but we're rapidly losing our strength as a city when we're losing our diversity and we're gentrifying everybody out. So that would be my aim.
And what would you do to, well, I think you've talked about it already. But let me ask you about some of the points you've made. You mentioned you'd have a moratorium on the increase of regressive taxes.
Correct.
Yet the city is kind of handcuffed, as you know, with property taxes being capped at 1% per year, and that's why they're going towards levies. And they have a sales tax, an income tax, a graduated income tax that's unconstitutional in the state. So what would you do to actually improve revenues?
So the municipal bank would be a key strategy because it will generate revenue without raising taxes, but there's other revenue sources in a progressive manner that the city actually does have available to itself right now. The impact fees is a standout issue. We're not charging impact fees. Why aren't we? I mean, these new communities and the developments are having impacts on our communities, and we're having to come out of our pocket to mitigate the impacts that they're creating on our communities. Granted, Seattle's going to be growing. We've got to develop to absorb this density, but it should not all be on the backs of the people when the developers are making such huge profits out of it.
So you mentioned that I guess you're an opponent of the grand bargain, or that sort of housing affordability, or if you were mayor, would you make it a better deal, or would you get rid of it?
I think that, yeah, I don't mind asking developers to try and do the right thing, but I wouldn't depend on that as my strategy. You know, I think that we probably should be asking for like 25-30% set aside or drastically increasing the alternative fees, but that should just be a part of the strategy. We really, fundamentally, we have to get into the public housing development business.
Okay. There was one point you made, which I don't know if I completely agree with you. You're saying that the housing is not keeping up with the amount of people moving here. And to my understanding of from the city's own data, the housing is keeping up. The issue is more that the housing that's being produced is 95% luxury housing. So I think that is increasing. Do you disagree with that, or?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I have to be honest, I haven't looked at actual numbers. What I'm looking at is from what other people have told me, but just eyeballing what's going on. Well, yes, a lot of it depends on the affordability. They're building 6-figure units or 7-figure units now, so the affordability issue is displacing a lot of people. But just looking at the number of homeless there just continually increasing, and the fact that we have grown. See, Seattle used to be, throughout my whole lifetime, up until about a decade ago, was very steady population, about 550,000. That's what we have been for decades. And then we all of a sudden boom, so 150,000 new people, and we're gonna be approaching 1 million here in a couple decades. I don't even know if it's a couple decades away, but we have not added that many units, 150,000 units, or family size, so, you know, whatever, 100,000.
Well, we can get into that debate, but
Yeah,
you don't need 150,000 units for 150,000 people.
yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah. So, as far as single-family zones and different types of lot sizes and different types of housing, would you, and for detached units, would you require ownership? Would you require ownership, home ownership, for people stay in their houses if they're going to have somebody staying at their detached housing unit? I'm not sure if I'm asking that correctly, but
Well, you know,
Couldn't please answer shortly?
you know, whether you're required to own it or not, you know, one of the things that we do have to recognize is that there's been a financialization of our housing marketplace. People are looking at housing as profit-making tools as opposed to providing shelter and residences and community for our neighborhoods. So, you know, I don't have necessarily a problem with people wanting to rent their home out, but as a requirement, I think that should be up to the neighborhood councils probably to decide what kind of neighborhood do they want.
okay. Thank you very much.